Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to make a second international trip when he visits South Africa next week. President Xi Jinping's visit will include a state visit. For more on this, SABC News International editor Sophie Mokoena now joining us live. Ms. Sophie, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us. So there was confirmation indeed earlier on that the visit of Xi Jinping will, of course, the state visit of Xi Jinping will coincide with the BRICS summit. But why is he asking for a state visit as well and not have a state visit separately to the BRICS summit that is taking place next week?
Well, I think you know that the president of China, Xi Jinping, will be in the country arriving on Monday at night. But you know that this will be his second international trip leaving the country. And therefore, I think he took a decision to combine both the state visit and also attend a meeting of the BRICS summit. And I think this is important because, as you are aware, that China is the second largest economy on the continent in terms of trade relations, but also worldwide, China is the second biggest economy. And also in terms of the trade relations with South Africa, it's quite important because it is our largest trading partner. And we know that the relations between the two countries dates back to exile years. The Communist Party of China has been supporting the struggle in South Africa. And I think President Xi Jinping took a decision to combine both the state visit and also his participation in the BRICS summit as an outgoing chair of the BRICS summit.
And what is expected to be on the agenda of that state visit?
Well, they will be engaging in terms of trade relations between South Africa and China, but also looking at the global challenges that are dragging the world in different directions. As you are aware that particularly the war in Ukraine, you know that both China and South Africa have strong ties with Russia, but also Russia is a member of BRICS, and therefore that issue will also be on the agenda. Another issue is the issue of transformation of the multilateral institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank, including the Security Council. You know that China is a permanent member of the Security Council, but we don't have a country on the continent that is part of the permanent team of the Security Council. We only have the P5. And I think President Ramaphosa will take an opportunity to engage President Xi Jinping in terms of the transformation of these multilateral institutions. The issue of the expansion of China on the continent, you know that China made a commitment to strengthen trade relations with the continent. And because you'll be having these leaders from the African continent, this will also be an opportunity for President Xi Jinping to have bilateral talks with some of these leaders. But in terms of trade, he's also bringing a high delegation in terms of business, and they will engage the South African business on the margins of the state visit and the margins of the BRICS summit. And therefore, it is one of the most important international engagements that President Xi Jinping will have this year.
And then, of course, looking on what's happening on the continent as well. And some people on the continent argue of a second colonization and being colonized by China. On the other end, we know that we have the African Continental Free Trade Area that is in full swing. Would there be any discussions at all on how do you bring on board big economies like China to help facilitate the African Continental Free Trade Area and also to ensure that it becomes a success?
Well, by inviting the other leaders on the continent, President Ramaphosa was clearly demonstrating the fact that when you want to engage Africa, you have to engage all the leaders, particularly in line with the African Continental Free Trade Area, where you have a population of more than 1 billion, and therefore you are able to negotiate in better terms with a better voice. And President Ramaphosa, I would recall when he was addressing a meeting in France recently, he made it clear that Africa and South Africa also going forward, it must be a partnership of mutual respect and negotiating from equal position, not one country or one region dominating the other. And I think that matter will be high on the agenda. But on many occasions, President Xi Jinping has pointed out that China would want a mutual relationship where there is mutual respect, but there are those people who are saying that Africa must be vigilant. We were colonized. We can't again find ourselves in a situation where we are being colonized. And it is important to note that you can only achieve that when you have strong leadership on the continent. And therefore, it is important for the AU and those who have signed up to the African Continental Free Trade Area to ensure that when you negotiate for Africa, you negotiate from a position where it is interest of Africa first, not being bullied or being pushed to accept some of these agreements that are likely going to ensure that Africa is colonized again. And I think President Xi Jinping is fully aware that Africa this time wants to ensure that they negotiate from a powerful position. And I think this is something that will come up when he is addressing the media with President Ramaphosa during the state visit, the issue of how do you ensure that you don't colonize the continent again, but you negotiate from an equal position.
And the final one is, of course, within the BRICS member states as well, they have their own disputes, China and India over the Himalayan border dispute. I wonder whether this could be an opportunity for the Prime Minister of India as well as the President of China to actually have a chat about how they can find a solution to this ongoing impasse and also avoid the provocation.
Well, you are correct, Aldrin. This will be an opportunity for the Prime Minister of India and the President of China to look at that on the margins of the summit. You know that during the meeting of the security cluster of ministers of BRICS, this issue did come up, and we saw the Foreign Affairs Minister of China and the Foreign Affairs Minister of India having a bilateral talk. And we are told that this issue was discussed, and that paved way for further engagements during the BRICS summit. But also it was a way to ensure that come BRICS summit, there is no tension. And we know that recently China did announce in India that they are willing to engage on this matter. But I think that meeting of the security cluster of ministers of BRICS did assist, because both China and India did have a bilateral talk on the margins of that meeting, and this matter was high on the agenda. And therefore, I don't see a situation where you can have this tension playing itself during the meeting of these leaders, because they did engage on this matter. And on Monday also, you are going to have foreign affairs ministers of BRICS meeting, and I think President Sergey, the foreign affairs minister of China and foreign affairs minister of India might have an opportunity to talk about this issue again.
Thank you so much, SABC International News editor there, Sophie Mokoena, on the state visit of Chinese President Xi Jinping ahead of the BRICS summit, of course, that kicks off next week, Tuesday.